This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Lebanon faces its worst crisis in decades. What will happen if Israel's northern neighbor falls? Plus, nuclear experts warn about the dangers of re-entering the Iranian nuclear deal. And archaeologists unveil a wonder from the time of Jesus.
15 years ago when I started guided here, I was standing above us and saying, underneath the arch, there's something. So now we are inside that something.
And Passages, the program introducing young Christians to Israel.
This is the place where our faith as Christians was born. This is our heritage. It's our spiritual heritage.
All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Lebanon, once known as the Switzerland of the Middle East, is now on the verge of economic and political collapse. The fall of Lebanon could have disastrous consequences for Israel and the greater Middle East. Recently, these Lebanese demonstrators blocked the main road to Beirut's airport to protest the abysmal conditions inside their country.
All the people are hungry and no one has anything to eat. No one can do anything. There's no electricity at home, children need milk, and no one can afford to buy it. That's why we're here.
Lebanon's worst crisis in decades includes no functioning government, a national currency freefall, and growing national debt. The world witnessed the catalyst for this disaster last August when this explosion rocked Beirut, sending shockwaves throughout the country. Now, people must wait hours in line for fuel, and that's when it's available. Blackouts occur daily to save electricity, and many hospitals don't have enough medicine. Lebanon's caretaker prime minister is pleading for help from Middle East nations, the UN, and the international community.
To help save the Lebanese from death and prevent the demise of Lebanon. Lebanon is a few days away from social explosion. The Lebanese are facing this dark fate alone.
Lebanese expert Orna Mizrahi blames the situation on the combination of political turmoil, economic corruption, Hezbollah, and the COVID pandemic. She says the main problem, however, is a dysfunctional political class.
We have a very rich elite of all sects that it's combined. There is a combination of money and political control in Lebanon, and they are doing nothing to help their own people. They are deteriorating day by day till the situation that we have now.
Hezbollah, led by Hassan Nasrallah, is the strongest power in the country, given its dominant military. Nasrallah wants Lebanon to shun the West and turn solely to Iran for help. Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz recently offered to send humanitarian aid through the UN, although it's unlikely Lebanon will accept the offer. Israel and the region now face a worst-case scenario.
That Lebanon will not fall in the hands of Iran. The international community will do nothing. It will worsen.
Mizrahi warns without help from the West, Lebanon could become like Syria, a state now under the influence of Iran. If Lebanon does fall to the Islamic Republic, it could change the complexion of the Middle East. And of course, if Iran got a nuclear weapon, it would change the world. Here in Jerusalem, a panel of nuclear experts warned about the resumption of the Iranian nuclear deal. The experts say despite the dangers, the U.S. and other nations seem to be in a hurry to renew that deal. These experts are part of the World Nuclear Forum, scientists who believe Iran is masquerading its nuclear program as a peaceful effort while maintaining a long-range plan to develop weapons.
It's not just a country that wants to become a nuclear power. It's an extreme religious country with the ideology of the Islamic Revolution to establish a hegemony over the region and even global hegemony, and with the intention to annihilate Israel.
They point out the original 2015 agreement focused on enriching uranium, but failed to address Iran's long-range ballistic missiles or warhead research, while flooding Iran with billions of dollars.
Immediately after that money was released, you start seeing proliferation of terror organizations. It's Hezbollah, it's Hamas, it's the Houthi in Yemen. So you start seeing that immediately. It's clearly a cause and effect thing.
These experts, including a Nobel Prize nominee, believe Iran may already have a nuclear weapon. How close do you think Iran is getting to a nuclear weapon?
Very close. If not, they have it already. So all of the world, all the superpowers, all looking about the uranium. But uranium is only one slice of the pizza.
I can find it hard to believe that a country that's such high-tech developed as Iran, working on it so many years, doesn't have at least one nuclear weapon, especially since they're connected to North Korea.
One expert predicts Iran would likely negotiate to dilute its highly enriched uranium in pursuit of a new agreement. He believes that's solely to manipulate public opinion and would have no impact.
It's not a problem for them within a few months to enrich to military grade and produce enough bombs to make it a threat against preemptive attack, which is exactly what the North Koreans did.
While some may dismiss a nuclear Iran, these scientists agree that just one nuclear weapon used as an EMP, an electronic magnetic pulse, could destroy a country's power grid and way of life.
Electricity, water, food, supermarket, hospitals. If you have a problem with an EMP, you have a real life problem, even in a great and big country like the United States.
This expert and intelligence officer helped with the 1981 Israeli strike that destroyed Saddam Hussein's atomic reactor. The experts say any agreement needs teeth.
You must have a ready-to-go, well-cooked military option. That's a must for the agreement.
These experts hope their views will help shape public opinion and inform American and world opinion to re-examine a nuclear deal they believe could have devastating consequences. Well, with one hand on a Bible, Isaac Herzog became Israel's 11th president on July 7th. His father Chaim also served as Israel's president in the 1980s. In a speech at the Knesset, Herzog pledged to help heal the divisions in Israeli society and be the president of all Israelis.
I pledge to help the government of Israel to defend Israel's righteousness in the world and its right to defend itself, to fight anti-Semitism and hatred of Israel, and to achieve the long-awaited peace with our neighbors, to stand by the side of the IDF soldiers and their commanders, both in the struggles in the international legal arena and in the fight against the strategic threats against Israel, including Iran's nuclear program. To our friends around the world, above all, our great friend, the United States, I say from here, the State of Israel stands firmly on your side on the international front in tackling the greatest and most complex challenges facing humanity.
Herzog will serve a 7-year term, and he takes over from President Reuven Rivlin. Up next, archaeologists uncovered ancient rooms next to the Temple Mount from the time of Jesus. Israeli archaeologists have uncovered a second chamber in the underground tunnels near Jerusalem's Western Wall from Second Temple times. As CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl tells us, the magnificent structures are part of a new route opening soon to the public that takes visitors back to ancient times.
The discoveries are the highlight of a new route through the Western Wall tunnels that sheds light on Jewish life in Jerusalem during the time of Jesus.
It's unbelievable to see this new excavation here. Maybe 15 years ago when I started guiding here, I was standing above us and saying, you know, underneath the arch, there's something. So now we are inside that something.
Johanna Bisror from the Western Wall Heritage Foundation said the new route will open in a few months. VIPs were invited this day for a preview.
We have a beautiful complex from the Second Temple period, maybe one of the most beautiful next to the Western Wall. You can see ritual bath, beautiful columns.
The discovery began here more than 100 years ago when British archaeologist Charles Warren climbed through a hole into this room. Now archaeologists have uncovered 2 more chambers.
And when we saw this room, which was the first thing to be revealed in the new excavations, we were excited because we realized what was not known then, that we are actually in the parallel room of the Hasmonean or Herodian Hall that was already known since Warren's time, since the 19th century. This is one big building.
The discovery of these rooms less than 100 feet from the Temple Mount adds a new layer of understanding to Second Temple times 2,000 years ago.
It was a building for the elite of the city, for the city councillors, for the rulers, a meeting place of them, a place where they could host their important guests just before climbing with them up to the Temple Mount.
It's unlikely that Jesus would have been a guest here.
If Jesus was a guest of the city councillors of Jerusalem at that time, he could. And the building was a place to host the elite. So who knows? I'm not so sure he was considered to be such an honor, but who knows? Who knows? Everything is possible.
IAA excavation director Shlomit Wexler-Bedolach said the only other building decorated like this one in Jerusalem at the time was the Temple Mount itself. And there's more. An indoor fountain and reservoir connecting the two chambers.
Here you see the capitals. They are still preserved. In the center of each capital, there is a hole. In this hole, there is a lead pipe that is inserted, where the water would come out. This is a fountain that was within a very magnificent building, so possibly they could control the flow of water. When there were guests and they wanted to impress them, they opened and the water would have flowed. When there was no guest, they closed.
At some point, this room was repurposed as a huge mikveh or ritual bath, maybe the largest in Jerusalem. Archaeologists say it may have been shortly before the temple was destroyed and the Jewish people scattered in 70 A.D.
2 weeks before the 9th of Av, the Hebrew month of Av, which is the day of the destruction of the second temple, for us to reveal that today. And maybe let's learn from the past and just learn something for the future. That's something very moving for us.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, the Western Wall Tunnels, Jerusalem.
Coming up, an exclusive interview with Hananya Naftali, one of Israel's preeminent social influencers. Hananya Naftali is one of Israel's most well-known social media advocates. We talked with Naftali about the battle of truth he wages on behalf of the state and the people of Israel. Hananya Naftali, great to be with you. And you're really so well-known on social media. You're a social media influencer. What's the main message you try to get across on all your platforms?
Well, one thing that guides me is that Israel is not, of course, free of blemishes, but it's absurd that Israel is being treated like it is the world's biggest problem. And I served in the IDF, I fought Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and I saw how we were treating Palestinians. I saw how we were fighting there. We were given strict commands to preserve human life. And then you see on international media, international forums, that Israel is being bashed for things that we didn't do. So the one thing that motivated me is, to share the truth about Israel, to not apologize for defending Israel. We have nothing to apologize for. We are doing the right thing, and this is what the world needs to know.
Yeah. So how do you respond to people when they accuse Israel of being an apartheid nation?
My favorite response is to invite them to Israel. Come to Israel. See, right now we are in Jerusalem, the capital of Israel. You see here Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike living together. When it's evening, you hear the church bell. You hear the mosque calling for prayer. You see Jews going to pray at the Western Wall. So we coexist. And those that call Israel as an apartheid state, they know nothing about Israel. They are being misled by the international media, by things that they heard. I'm pretty sure that they have never been to Israel. So I invite them to come to Israel.
Yeah. So you fought Hamas in one of the recent conflicts. And just in May, there was another 11-day war between Israel and Hamas. How would you describe the way Israel was portrayed in much of the media?
Well, in the recent conflict, I was sitting in front of my computer combating these lies. And one thing that I really noticed is that people really don't know what Israel is. People have an idea of what Israel is like, what Israel is doing. And they like to cling to stereotypes, to things that they heard before. And we need to break down these lies that are misleading people. And Israel was being portrayed as an aggressor, as a country that commits crimes against humanity, committing crimes against children in Gaza, Palestinians. But let me tell you this, I'm an Israeli-born Jew. I served in the IDF, and I love Palestinians. Does the world think that we Israelis hate Palestinians? Does the world think that our IDF troops prefer to be on the border instead of being back home? Obviously not. So the world needs to understand that we are not committing crimes against humanity. One thing that a lot of people don't know, it's that when you join the IDF, the first thing that you are given is not a weapon. It is this small booklet that teaches you about the values of the IDF. It's called the IDF Code of Ethics. They teach you how to preserve human life, treat people with dignity, and only then you are taught how to defend the country.
Would you say that you were there on the battlefield literally, and there was another battlefield just back in May? Would you say you're on another battlefield right now, the battlefield for truth and in media around the world?
Exactly right. As I've said earlier, in 2014, I was inside the Gaza Strip fighting Hamas. In the recent conflict, I was fighting Hamas on social media and fighting these lies. And let me tell you this, the war may be over, but we still have an ongoing battle on social media, on the media, on every, you literally just need to open your phone and see what's going on. There's an ongoing battle. We need to share the truth as an Israeli. I am combating these lies because I have nowhere else to go. This is my homeland.
So what would you encourage people on their own social media platforms to do in defense of Israel?
Very easy. First of all, I do encourage you to pray for Israel. As a believer in God, I feel these prayers. I feel stronger, I feel encouraged. So I would say this is number one. Number two, join conversations. If you hear something about Israel, why be silent? Why be silent? And number three, share the truth. Share the truth. Take content. You don't need to have a camera and have script, write things down and talk to the camera. You just need to share the truth. Everybody has social media nowadays, and it could be used to do something good.
Yeah. You have huge followings on your social media platforms, but for those that haven't seen or heard about you, how can they follow you?
I wasn't that original, so you just need to write on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, my name, Hanania Naftali, and you'll be able to find it and join this ongoing battle because we need more and more and more people.
Yeah, Hanania Naftali, great to be with you.
Thank you very much.
Up next, it's called Passages, and it introduces young college students to the land of the Bible and the people of Israel.
This is the place where our faith as Christians was born. This is our heritage. It's our spiritual heritage.
Now that Israel is trying to resume international tourism, it's seeing a number of groups ready to take advantage. As Julie Stahl shows us, that includes an American group that brings Christian university students to the Holy Land.
Passages aims to help Christian students discover their roots and more.
This is the place where our faith as Christians was born. This is our heritage. It's our spiritual heritage.
Executive Director Scott Phillips was part of one of the first groups allowed back into the country following the COVID-19 shutdown.
We believe it's really important for Christians today, young Christians, to make connections with Israel, with modern Israel, with the Jewish people. We've got so much in common. There's so many shared values. As Christians, our faith exists because of the Jewish people.
Passages has brought more than 8,000 university students to Israel since 2015. Now they hope to bring another 3,000 within a year.
Passages is an organization that it's not just a 9-day trip to Israel. It truly, I've been involved with many organizations all across the world, and Passages more than any other invests in their alumni. It invests in the future Christians of America.
This was Kennedy Lee's third trip.
It's the same in the fact that everyone is out and about in the streets. Everything is so lively, everything is moving, and people really feel alive. You can feel the spirit of the people of Israel.
But there are other things that have affected Israel too. The recent 11-day war with Hamas, as well as rioting in mixed Jewish-Arab cities in Israel.
Israel, the people of Israel, have had a really hard last year and a half. Of course, the world has. But on top of that, a month ago, with 4,500 rockets coming out of Gaza, from Hamas into Israel. Of course, all of the domestic conflict happening, the riots and so forth in Israeli cities throughout the country.
We talked to a mother-in-law who tells us that she moves to this community specifically to raise her family, a place where Arabs and Jews live together in peace and coexistence, and now it is hard to look at her neighbors. That's heartbreaking. It's just something I never expected, and that even 2 years ago it seemed like it would be hard to hear that in Israel. So I think that's something that is different and I maybe wasn't ready for.
Lee said the Passage's trips equip her to speak to people her own age.
The younger generation doesn't speak in facts, and that's true, especially regarding this, a topic that has so many just feelings and emotions. So for me, going home and being able to kind of be an ambassador for the people that we have talked to during this trip and take their emotion, I've felt emotion, I've seen it in their eyes, in their demeanor, and in their words, and to be able to take that back, to talk to my younger friends in America and just tell them, you know, I was there a few weeks after it happened. I actually know what is going on, and I'm so happy that Passages is here with students and that we can do that.
Phillips said the Israelis are glad to see them too.
We're just excited to be back, to be able to provide some kind of joy. It gives us joy to be with our friends in Israel, and so we hope that we can give some joy to others here.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, that's all for this edition. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can also access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. And don't forget to sign up for our email blasts so you can continue to receive all of our exciting CBN content. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time.